Good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Shayna Sackett-Gable, and along with Leslie Kerner, I am a leader of the South Orange Maplewood School District President's Council. The President's Council is an assembly of all current elected presidents and vice presidents of our district PTAs, parent-teacher associations, HSAs, home and school associations, CPAC, that's the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. And our goals are to foster and strengthen our school communities locally and district-wide, facilitate productive communication with the district, and to optimize the efforts of all PTAs and HSAs through collaboration and shared knowledge. In addition to bolstering our own school communities, we partner with district administration, local businesses and organizations such as the Achieve Foundation and the Board of Education. Tonight, we are proud to partner with the League of Women Voters to present this debate. And now I turn it over to Michelle Bobrow, one of our local League of Women Voters representatives.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see all of you here tonight. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey is a nonpartisan political nonprofit that works to empower voters and defend democracy. Founded over 100 years ago, we make democracy work by protecting voter rights and encouraging a robust participation. Elections and voting are core concerns for the League of Women Voters. Leagues are committed to providing fact-based information about issues and the positions that candidates take on those issues to help voters make their own decisions and participate in the electoral process. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. Any use of the League name or footage from the forum tonight in campaign materials, literature, or advertising of any kind, including but not limited to internet, cable, radio, or television, has not been authorized by the League of Women Voters. As a courtesy to the candidates, please turn off all cell phones and other electronic devices now, and please refrain from taking photographs during the forum. The League of Women Voters of Maplewood South Orange was formed in the 1930s and has been serving our community by educating voters, registering voters, holding elective office forums, impacting public policy, and studying vital issues of the times. In the interest of open government on all levels to the voters which the government serves, we are proud to co-host tonight's forum. The League, on all levels, again, does not support or oppose any candidates. In that spirit, our moderator, Kathy Kazan, is from Passaic County, a member of the Wayne League of Women Voters, and has no personal involvement in this election. She will now introduce the candidates for the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education and explain the format for the evening. Kathy?
Thank you so much, Michelle. I will begin by introducing the candidates. There are 5 candidates vying for 3 seats on the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. We have seated the candidates as they are slated, and there are 2 slates. As mentioned, you are not obligated to vote for every member of a slate. You will vote for the individual. Let me introduce them. Slate 1, students come first. Regina Eckert, Bill Gifford, Nubia Wilson. Slate 2, doing better together. Will Meyer, Rita Pancholi. Candidates will begin with a 90-second opening statement as I call upon them from left to right. The timekeepers will signal time remaining as follows: 30 seconds and red for 15 seconds and red for stop. Please pay attention to the timekeepers. Candidates will then be called upon to answer questions in the order I choose, and you will have 1 minute to answer. These are questions provided by the sponsor, and if time allows, we will use questions submitted by the public. Once you have begun speaking, the timekeepers again will signal 30 seconds and red 15 seconds, red for stop. We will then conclude with 90-second closing statements in the reverse order and end the evening with remarks from the sponsor and important election information. Let's begin. First opening statement will be Ms. Eckert.
Thank you. Thank you to President's Council and League of Women's Voters for hosting us this evening and for everything that you do for the students in our schools. I'm Regina Eckert, Maplewood resident of about 6 years. I have a second grader at Tuscan, Alexandra, and an almost 4-year-old Lucas just waiting in the wings to become a Tuscan Tiger. This forum is especially important to me because I've been an active Tuscan PTA member since my daughter started her journey in this district in 2020. I'm going on year 3 of managing the website and volunteering at various events. But tonight, I'm here as a Board of Ed candidate. I'm here because while I love my community, I'm concerned about the current and the future state of this district. It's evident that there's a lack of focus on teaching and learning, especially in the early years. And I do recognize that a Board of Ed member commitment requires balance and prioritization. But it's because of my children, our children, that I'm here today. I know we can be a great district, one that can provide an enriching education for all of our students, one where teachers feel respected and valued. But we're not doing that today, and I look forward to telling you more about it alongside my running mates, Bill and Nubia. Thank you.
If I could just pause for 1 second. Can I ask the timekeeper to sit where I can see you in that last chair? I'm sorry. I can't see. I can't see you, so if they're going over time, I won't know. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I didn't realize it till we started. Thank you. I'll start when you're ready. I'm sorry. No, I realized I couldn't see her. That's not a good thing. Okay, ready? All right, Mr. Gifford, you're up.
My name is Bill Gifford. I grew up in Maplewood. I went to Tuscan, Maplewood Middle School, and then Columbia. I actually ran for the Board of Ed as a high school senior, and then again as a college freshman. I ran for the board because as students, we felt the board wasn't listening. When they cut VOTEC, outsourced janitorial services, and were doing absolutely nothing about the achievement gap, we said enough was enough. If they weren't going to have us at the table, I was going to pull up a chair. Honestly, it feels like things haven't changed. Sorry. I totally blanked there. Sorry. Sorry. So, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. So, Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness. So anyway, I think this board needs a sea change in the way that it communicates with the people, with the community. I think right now we need something like participatory budgeting to engage the constituents as we're making these decisions, not after. And I think we need neighborhood board meetings that go to the people, not the other way around. So, sorry about that.
Thank you. It happens, sitting in the hot seat. But please hold your applause till the end. Ms. Wilson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the President's Council and League of Women Voters. I'm Nubia Wilson, and I have lived in South Orange for 11 years. I have a 4th grader and a 2nd grader in South Mountain Elementary School, and for the past 7 years, I've been connected with this community through my public relations agency, supporting local businesses here and even nonprofits like the Community Coalition on Race. For the past 2 years, I've been using my communication skills to speak directly to our district, reaching out to the administration to try to problem solve and create solutions to advocate for our students. I even wrote an op-ed in the Village Green about emotional intelligence, offering best practices and advice for how to communicate with parents using EQ. During COVID, I experienced, like many of you, fight or flight. And at one point, I thought that I wanted to leave this district. I was really scared, and I realized later that I love this community. I have so much amazing friends and family and extended family here, and my kids do too, and I didn't want to leave it. I wanted to be part of the solution. So I'm running for Board of Ed because I want to face these challenges we have with academic achievement gaps. with low teacher morale. And I'm running with Regina and Bill, and I'm so pleased to be doing that on the Students Come First slate. And I know that we can make a difference for this amazing community that we live in. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and President's Council for hosting tonight's debate. I came to this race with one central organizing principle, that all parents should feel confident being able to entrust their child to our school system, knowing that they will thrive, regardless of their race, their income, or their neurodiversity. And our district is succeeding at that for a large number of our kids, but not all of them. As a special education attorney in New York, I've witnessed countless examples of school districts failing to address a child's individualized needs. And I've seen the way that impacts the child and their family. My career has focused so far on righting that wrong for individual families after they've reached wit's end. But there's a better way. I'm seeking a seat on our Board of Education, along with my running mate and friend, Ritu Pancholi, in the hopes that our district can be a place where we do it right the first time, where we don't need to make parents fight for their kids' individual needs to be recognized and addressed. I'm a dad, first and foremost. My son is a second grader at South Mountain, and my daughter in our district preschool program. I spent a lot of time volunteering in our schools, and I currently serve on South Mountain PTA. Go Superstars. I've also been watching the board closely for several years, and I'm eager to bring my deep experience in education and heart for service to bear in making our school system more inclusive, more student-centered, and more just.
Thank you. Ms. Pancholi.
Good evening. You did say it right. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ritu Pancholi. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the President's Council for having us today. Thank you also to my fellow candidates. Like Nubia and Will, I too am a South Orange resident and a South Orange mom of 2 kids at South Mountain Elementary School. I am running for the Board of Education because I believe in the power of our public schools and our community. I believe in our students and our teachers. I am actually the product of New Jersey public schools myself. Exit 5 off the New Jersey Turnpike and Rutgers University. Thank you very much. My story, though, begins with my mother, who was a teacher in India and who immigrated to America. Her first job in America was as a preschool teacher. My education, my public school education, offered my immigrant family the opportunity to dream and prosper. I knew that I wanted to dedicate myself to public service after I graduated from law school. One of my first jobs in my career was working for the New York City Department of Education. I left the DOE with a pragmatic understanding of how difficult public schools are to affect change, but also how important it is to deliver change for all of our students. I won't lie, we have challenges in this community, but I am proud of this community for addressing those challenges and for addressing them head on. I promise you that if you elect Will Meyer and I, we will do that.
Okay. Moving on to our first question. The success of our school district relies on collaboration and accountability. Many people in town feel the BOE is not functioning collaboratively. What do you think is the origin of the divisiveness of the current board, and what will you do to change this and move the BOE to a well-functioning board? We will begin with Ms. Eckert.
The biggest challenges right now that this current board faces is a lack of transparency and a lack of respect. If you watch any of the board meetings, you can tell something is broken. In fact, they recognize it themselves. During their August retreat, they rated themselves a 1.8 out of 4. And I do commend them for recognizing that they do need to improve their internal relationships. However, 2 months later, a board meeting erupts into a shouting match. Things haven't gotten better, and there's still a lot of work to be done. That's not who I am, and that's not who we, Nubia, Bill, and I are. Collaboration and transparency is needed to build trust and consensus. We will come prepared to meetings to ensure productive conversations. We will ask the critical questions.
Thank you.
Oh, I wasn't done.
I'm sorry, I thought it was red. Oh, forgive me.
That's okay. We may not always agree, but we commit to coming to the table and being open to hearing different perspectives. The only way that we can improve board communications to our community is if we improve them within first. Thank you.
I hope you gave her 15 seconds. Thank you. Mr. Gifford.
Hello? Hi. Just the fact that we're asking this question acknowledges that we have a serious problem. We have a board that's not working together. One of the issues that actually motivated me to run was that while our teachers were in the streets in the cold fighting for fair pay, we had board members bullying colleagues, turning off their mic. Just last week, a board member was shouted down. The first thing any of us can do is to acknowledge this behavior is unacceptable and call it out. This is not who we are. And I would challenge every candidate to say the same. It starts with accountability from the board. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Wilson, same question.
After what we saw last month, I think we can all say that there are board members who know how to trigger one another. And when you don't heal those triggers, it becomes a toxic environment. The board majority often presents itself as not being willing to listen to the other side. And that majority has also created a lot of the challenges and situations that we're in today. The one difference I can say about our slate is that we are on the other side of that. We represent change. And for us, we want to come in to collaborate. We want to connect with all members of the board, no matter what slate they were running on before they got on the board, and no matter what their perspectives are, we want to hear them, we want to listen to them. We want to create and build relationships, not just in this boardroom, but outside of this boardroom. And if there are board members that are not dedicated to committing themselves to listening to every person's perspective, it is a disservice to this community. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. Look, first, the culture of bickering and backbiting that we've seen and heard is unacceptable. Full stop. We need to lead by example. We need to be a governance body that we would want our students to emulate. And we need to find ways to forge bonds of trust with each other on the board. We're not going to agree all the time, but we can agree to the ground rules of how we have our debates. I'm not a person who's going to shy from a debate over something important, and I'm always going to vote my own conscience. But I will gladly sit down with anyone and try to find consensus, and otherwise agree to disagree. You don't burn a bridge you're going to need to walk back over the next month. But I also need to say, don't just take the negative stories at face value. I look at the same Facebook posts and the same articles that you do. If I wasn't watching the board meetings myself, I wouldn't know about the collaboration and good faith work that does happen right now among all 9 committed volunteers on the board. We're not so far gone here, and we can fix this.
Ms. Pancholi.
Thank you. I want to start off first by addressing change. None of us at this stage are incumbents. All of us represent change. Anyone you elect today will represent change because none of us have been part of the current Board of Education's alleged dysfunction. What we do know is that they're not communicating in a transparent and independent way. What we also know, though, is that districts that have well-run boards of education have higher student achievement. One of the attributes shared by effective school boards is a good working relationship with your fellow Board of Education candidates and members, as well as your superintendent. As the owner of an HR consulting company that's called in to fix dysfunctional workplaces, I know one thing is true, the 80-20 rule. 80% of your time should be spent listening, 20% of your time should be spent speaking. You'll have to ask my husband how good I am at this in my own marriage, but I try.
Okay, next question. Now that we are in the second phase of the Intentional Integration Initiative, what successes and challenges have you seen or heard about thus far? How will you address concerns that the 3 places undue hardship on families? I'm sorry. I have no, look, what is that? How will you address the concerns that the III places undue hardship on families, example, transportation, start and end times? while ensuring that our district meets the goals of this critical initiative. Now we will begin with you, Mr. Gifford.
It's unfortunate, but many have been vilified for complaining about transportation issues or even accused of being against III. Let's be clear. There was a lack of communication around changes to busing and then a lack of buses themselves. III cannot be successful without significantly expanded busing. We fired our drivers and sold our buses. Now we're scrambling to find both. People are more frustrated with this than against III. The next board's job is to hold the administration accountable to provide adequate transportation. Otherwise, you open the door to criticism for the III. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
First, I want to say that our slate wholeheartedly supports the integration initiative, and we believe that it just needs to be executed correctly. For successes, if you look at the data, racially and socioeconomically, the schools are more balanced, but we're missing some of the human element of that story. Where are the experience survey results? We haven't gotten them yet because the surveys weren't sent out when they were supposed to be. Some of those, that's one of our challenges, in addition to the fact that I am tired of the narrative that only white parents are complaining about transportation. It's just not true. And recently I had a conversation on Vos Avenue with a Black family that said, hey, we opted into South Boyden in January and we're told we were getting a bus. And then in the summer, we were told it's actually a transfer and you're not getting a bus. That woman is now working less to get her kid to work every day, and that shouldn't be the case. So we are dedicated to reevaluating this initiative once we get some more survey feedback from our parents. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. I guess I would start by putting this question in context. We are at the very beginning of just year 2 of an enormous initiative to fix gross inequities in our school. This is a huge change. I'm encouraged by the successes we have seen so far, and honestly, I'm grateful to live in a community that's ready to address these issues in the first place. There's no question the district made a huge misstep with transportation. We absolutely should have had a comprehensive plan in place when the program started. I fully support increasing transportation this year if possible, and certainly fixing it for next year, as long as we find a fiscally responsible way of making it happen. But are we achieving our primary objective, which is addressing inequity in our schools? So far, the answer is yes. The program has a review scheduled at the 3-year mark, and I support considering any modifications that would further encourage equity, not put it at risk. But we just can't lose sight of the importance of what it is that we're all doing here.
Ms. Pancholi.
I empathize with the families and students who have been impacted by the transportation issues this year. I do want to be clear, however, that none of the candidates here disagree that transportation is important. In fact, the current Board of Education and the Board of School Estimates has already met to begun planning from a budgetary point of view on how to provide transportation for as many families as possible. It's critical that we do that, but we also can't let it derail our important goals of achieving integration in our community. It took us years to establish the integration initiative. Our community is committed to integration. We know that New Jersey schools are some of the most segregated schools in America. We have an obligation to our students and our families to fulfill the promise of integrated schools. And we have the opportunity to do that here. We are different from other schools in New Jersey, and I hope that we remain steadfast in our support of the integration initiative.
Ms. Eckert.
We believe that integration is long overdue and necessary for our students and for the greater good of this community. It's finally happening after years of planning, and we applaud that. As Nubia mentioned, the year 1 data looks good, but we really need to dig deeper. Have we put the supports in place to actually raise educational outcomes for students of color? Sure, transportation, it's the biggest and the hot topic right now, but it really only scratches the surface. The Intentional Integration Initiative, like COVID, has laid bare the deficiencies of this district, specifically related to budgeting and implementation. The Board of School Estimates had to call a meeting, and they still could not wrap their heads around any of the budgeting. All of the data presented, while I applaud it, it should have been thought through before we changed the transportation policy. The board needs to have members that will be forward-looking and will hold the administration accountable to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Third question. Our community and school district focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that mean to you, and what would show you by the end of the term that we have achieved diverse, equitable, and inclusive schools? Starting with you, Ms. Wilson.
I'm going to focus on teaching and learning for this. I am a mental health advocate, and I'm obsessed with how a child's environment will impact them in life. I have done some research and read a lot about intergenerational trauma, and that is trauma that is in your DNA. It's passed on from generation to generation. Black people in America have endured physical, emotional, verbal abuse and trauma for centuries. And I believe that more that teachers can understand this, they'll be able to better support Black students in the classroom. We have a teacher survey, and we've been talking to a lot of teachers and have learned that our DEI training could be improved and could be a bit more structured. And I believe that if we get on, we can advocate for more DEI training for these teachers, which will allow them to support Black students and their unique emotional needs, which could also contribute to closing the achievement gap for them. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Well, I want to address the question first. If you are watching this video in 3 years at my reelection campaign, I need you to know I don't think we actually can achieve having gotten a diverse, equitable, and inclusive school system. I think this is a moving target, and it's an ongoing process. But let me tell you a few examples of what I think I would hope to see. I want to see a school system where every single one of our classrooms reflects the diversity of our towns in race and socioeconomic factors, where teachers have the training, tools, and initiative to effectively serve every child in their classroom, which includes cultural competency and training in neurodiversity. And ultimately, a school system where you can't peek your head into a classroom at Columbia High School and know from the color of the student's skin what level you're looking at. There's a disturbing achievement gap and persistent stratification at the high school, and that has to be the measure for any of our successes at this point. Thank you.
Ms. Pancholi.
DE&I is an ongoing journey in this country, especially with our current historical reckoning. I like to quote Verna Myers, "Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, but belonging is dancing like nobody's watching." So we have this vision for our schools and our community where we can be our true selves, where our students don't have to code switch or hide parts of themselves or face microaggressions, but can be their true, authentic selves. So what are some SMART goals that we can hold the superintendent responsible for in terms of our progress on DE&I? We can ask the superintendent to report back on our progress on hiring and retaining teachers from underrepresented groups. We can ask the superintendent what academic interventions and programs is he putting in place to address the systemic disparity of Black student success at Columbia High School. We can ask the superintendent to demonstrate what professional development training is he continuing to offer our teachers.
Ms. Eckert.
As we can tell, this is a very, very broad question. I think everybody here has kind of taken a different approach. For me, it means that the schools reflect our community in every single way. Every student has equal access to learning, is treated equitably by the learning community, and feels valued and supported by their teachers and their peers. But it's also just not about how they feel, but how we bake it into how we celebrate them every single day and in all of our differences. So it's not just the color of our skin, but our interests, our backgrounds, how we identify students with disabilities. To achieve this, we really need to align our district goals. We only seem to focus on the achievement gap in high school. Let's expand that to the earlier years and our most at-risk students, those with special needs. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
While I appreciate the question, it doesn't focus on specifics. We must address problems specifically. The OCR and the BPW lawsuits specifically call out the plight of Black students as well as special ed students. Aspirations of diversity, equity, inclusion are great, but they don't mean anything if we don't have milestones and metrics which to measure the initiatives. We need to make closing the achievement gaps, both racial, socioeconomic, and special ed, specific district goals that are not bundled into overall student achievement and integration.
Okay. Next question. Our district's budget constraints continue to grow, prompting hard choices and at times the elimination of items that many families deem essential. What do you see as the district's budget priorities? What innovative solutions could help focus our limited budget on those activities that most directly impact student learning? Let's begin with you, Mr. Meyer.
Thanks. So it's true. The budget is tight. Everyone knows we have a small commercial tax base. So even though our taxes are sky high, we still have limited funds. And we can largely blame Trenton for this. Our state funding was decimated a decade ago and hasn't really come back. I would like us to focus efforts on changing or at least enforcing the state formula for districts like ours. I strongly support the pay increase that we gave to teachers this year, and I think our main goal now needs to be investing in our instructional resources for at-risk students through our equity work and in special services. For instance, improving special education offerings on the front end can reduce legal fees and private tuition we pay on the back end, which is a win-win. We also need to do a better job at showing where our money is going. We have comprehensive audits every year, and we always pass. But we don't make it easy for taxpayers to actually review how we spend our money or where these trade-offs are actually happening. And I think that should change, and that's an important communication step forward.
Ms. Pancholi.
The district has begun to address many of our community's large priorities, such as paying our teachers a meaningful salary, addressing our antiquated school infrastructure, and working on integration initiatives. The truth is, for a long time, though, this district didn't do that. We operated from a scarcity mindset, and we didn't invest in our students or our teachers. I don't want to mince my words, though. The tax burden on us is insurmountable and perhaps unsustainable. For too long, we have not received our fair share from the school funding formula. We need to hold our elected leaders in Trenton responsible. And the truth is I'm no stranger to doing that. I led an organization that actually advocates on that level, SOMA Action. I plan on using my advocacy skills and my knowledge of New Jersey politics to drive that issue. I also plan on asking the superintendent to return to holding budget town halls where we go through line item by line item where the money is being spent.
Ms. Eckert.
The budget is a complex document that reflects our district's priorities. For me, it's not just about where to make cuts, but we have to think about how we communicate the budget so that our community understands why decisions are made. So I just want to be clear that the board oversees the process. They're not actually setting the budget. What we need to do is set forth more defined district goals so that the superintendent can better align the budget that he's managing. So for example, if special education is a priority and it's written in as a goal, the superintendent can allocate the resources there. Let's also agree that it's time we start investing in our teachers, pay them a competitive salary, build a supportive community for them. If we think about the budget more holistically, we actually may be able to positively affect student outcomes. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
It's hard to provide an adequate answer for this in 60 seconds. The primary goal of the district is to teach kids and prepare them for the future. For the administration, this means looking down the road as far as possible so that cuts aren't a surprise. Right now, we're using Band-Aids for big problems. Outsourcing is a Band-Aid. They said we paid teacher salaries with the money we saved, but now we're going to the Board of Estimates and potentially raising taxes to fix business, to fix busing.
In addition to what my slate has already said, budgets need to align with district goals. And right now, there seems to be an info gap with that. And when that doesn't happen, we have conflict and we have chaos. So the budget is a major issue right now, and it's a concern. I'm also concerned that last summer, the current BOE said that a grow for them is being able to actually look at the financial documents from the district and that they needed training. I have not seen that as a goal for them this year, but I hope that it is happening because that will help future board members. In addition, we need to have an audit that is going to clearly connect our district goals with our budgets that we are trying to work through, right? If we don't have the money to get through these goals, then our students cannot achieve. And right now, I don't see a clear connection between our budgetary decisions and student achievement, and that's a problem. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Many people are concerned about the serious issues that have arisen due to the lack of mental health support, personnel, and resources for both students receiving special education services and those who have not needed support in the past. A return to normalcy at school has been far from the case for many students. They have been experiencing or witnessing school refusal, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, disruptive behaviors, or outright fights. How can our BOE help with this very serious problem? Starting with you, Ms. Pancholi.
Thank you. The pandemic has only brought more attention to the nationwide epidemic on students' socio-emotional mental health status. Our district is not immune from those challenges. I'm sure all the families in this room and those watching can agree that adolescence is a trying time. What we do know, however, is that creating an inclusive school environment, an environment where each student has one positive encounter at least in the school, does lead to improved student outcomes. Some innovative ideas that might work well in our community include, I believe in the power of the arts and sports. I believe that we need to build even more wraparound services to encourage that. Personally, as a soccer player in high school, that's where I made my strongest connections. I also know that we need to work with our elected town leaders to ensure that we're using the statewide grant process to drive even more resources to our community. And finally, we need to build more environments where our students can gather safely and talk about the issues.
Ms. Eckert.
So restorative justice and social emotional learning are already included in district goals. But what progress has been made since those have been set? What conflict resolution training is happening? Do students have a place to work through their feelings? Remember, we did not handle COVID well. We were one of the last districts in New Jersey to get back in person. Students suffered and are still suffering. And unfortunately, some of the worries that I had as a parent in this district, organization, supports, preparation, still exist today. What I don't see is any evidence that we are actually addressing this, and we need to be revamping staff training. What we really need is to accelerate action and accountability so that this doesn't continue on. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
I think it's important to remember, for the district, the why is the students. Why are we here? The students. The what are the problems? That's the board. And the how is the administration. Our responsibility is to provide a framework for the superintendent to solve these problems. From an operational standpoint, ask the superintendent, what is needed to solve this problem? Programs, resources, personnel. This is the board's primary responsibility. I plan to support the superintendent as best as I can to do that.
Ms. Wilson.
So we're in the middle of a mental health crisis in this country and as well as in this community, as Ritu shared. I'm really happy that the district is going to work on a social emotional learning and restorative justice program. And I look forward to being able to contribute to that and to make sure that the strategies are research backed and that also that there are performance and success metrics included in that program. The one thing that I am very concerned about is some recent news from the Governor Murphy's administration that schools are being defunded. Their mental health programs for youth are being defunded, and now the administration is creating a hub, a centralized hub for students to receive their mental health support outside of school. I don't know if the current board is aware of this, but if I'm able to be on the board, it's something that I would make a priority to understand what is being removed, what funding is being removed from our schools, and how are we going to be able to keep some type of services for our students when they need it most, which is right now. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
So unfortunately, these mental health issues are things that I've seen day in and day out in my practice. And they've existed far before COVID, but they've spiked recently for sure. And this is an issue that goes beyond the school. It's important that parents are listening to their kids and securing therapeutic supports when they're needed. But there's a lot we can do. All children need to feel safe and nurtured at school before they can be available for instruction. And I'm talking pre-K all the way through 12th grade and up. We need to employ social emotional learning, both through the use of emotionally aware curricula and by actually pushing therapeutic supports right into the classroom. Access to counselors is key, and we can address this both through increased use of social work interns, as we've done in some of our schools recently, and exploring volunteer partnerships with the many therapists in our community. And crucially, we must take down the barriers that prevent students from getting qualified special education supports when they need them, especially for kids who have anxiety and school refusal issues that don't present until mid-adolescence. Thank you.
Okay, next question. In recent years, the district has lost key staff, including both teachers and administrators at all levels. What do you see as the reason for so many departures, and what can you, as a Board of Ed member, do to retain talent in future years? Beginning with you, Ms. Eckert.
I think it's really unfortunate that in my conversations with the community, I've heard that we are a training district and that teachers get trained here and then they leave. We have seen, first and foremost, especially during the pandemic, that teachers have left for to neighboring districts for $20,000 to $30,000 more. I talked about it earlier, and I truly believe we really need to start investing in our teachers. Yes, we got through the negotiation and we got them the raises, but are we really paying competitive salaries looking at our neighboring districts? I also have experience from my ed tech days building out retention strategies and recruiting strategies. I believe we firmly need to really put a focus on that. We started off this school year with about 40 vacancies, and about half of them were in special education. From what I understand, that has since improved, but we really need to make that a focus. And I was really disappointed it wasn't listed as a district goal for this year. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
Going to Columbia, I actually have many friends who became teachers in the district. At first, they worked in the Newark, but all they wanted to do was come back to Columbia. And I can tell you, after probably 6 years, the only thing they want to do is leave. And that is because they do not feel supported. Teachers came and told the superintendent, we do not feel safe at Underhill. And this was before the shooting. And the superintendent told them, well, talk to your union. So the first thing we have to do is repair this broken bond, and we have to support them. And I believe that our budgets reflect our values. And if we have to, pay the teachers more, I think we need to do that. And we should pay them, a wage that is in line with the wages of the state.
Ms. Wilson.
So not many people know I was a teacher. After I graduated, I went to Taiwan and Taipei, and I taught English to students, to young children, as well as adults. And the second school where I worked, I actually helped them open up a second school by revamping a lot of our internal programs. And I expanded, and I was in charge of hiring, and I was in charge of keeping track of two different batches of schools of teachers. And what I learned at the age of 24 doing that is constant contact and keeping up with people's values and morals. And what we've learned so far from our teacher survey is that teachers don't feel like they're valued. Teachers don't feel like they're being communicated with. They feel like the district is out of touch. And they want to be here. They want to teach our children, but we have to also make sure that they are feeling valued and that they are feeling seen by the district. So I know we do exit interviews. We need to be doing stay-on interviews. We need to be checking in with our teachers consistently to see what they need and how we can support them. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. So pay is an obvious one, right? We just did a huge pay increase to our teachers. 85% of our budget right now is salaries and benefits. I don't know where exactly more money is coming from to pay our teachers, and we can't compete with wealthier communities around on pay alone. But I think we need to look at how are we empowering our teachers and how are we respecting them. One major piece here, when I talk to teachers, I ask, are people asking you how things are going? And they say, no, no one asks us. There's no feedback loop. There is a thing that we've done for the past year, the Rutgers Climate Survey. We asked this of parents, students, and teachers at Columbia and the middle schools. And it's a comprehensive survey of how are things going. And this is really important. We need to keep doing this. It needs to go down and hit our elementary schools as well. We also need to be making sure that things that teachers are innovating and doing in their own classrooms are brought up and brought district-wide, because they are the experts we have in the classroom and they need to be empowered.
Thank you. Ms. Pancholi.
It's really difficult to sometimes watch the way in which members of our community talk about the teachers in our district. Majority of us talk about our teachers in a positive way, but sometimes the online rhetoric doesn't reflect that. I think that we need to also, as a community, look internally into how do we want to treat the profession? How do we want to teach the very people who teach our kids? And if it's a respectful manner, then I would ask and urge all of us to participate in that. You know, it's a demanding profession, and we know that. And for the teachers in this district worked for years without a contract. I'm happy to see that they've received a fair contract now. But I also think we need to support our teachers with ongoing professional development and continuing to support their growth and to respect the profession and to show them the respect that they deserve.
Okay. Moving on to some questions from the audience. The board recently passed its district goals. What are your thoughts about them? Beginning with you, Mr. Gifford.
I will actually admit I am not currently up to date on the most recently one. I know that the ones that were passed, 3 years ago, which I thought were the most current, I definitely support, and I think that really we just need to help hold the superintendent accountable and support him as best we can to meet those goals.
Ms. Wilson.
One of the things I notice is that this year's goals do not include faculty and teacher retention. They included it for the previous school year, but not this one. And as we've entered the school year with so many openings, I am worried about that. So I hope that throughout the year, the board is going to be able to somehow incorporate some type of sub-goals into that. We've seen that even if you're looking for multiple years in the district, that turnover with faculty, turnover with staff creates gaps. And you can't have a successful district if people are constantly leaving it, especially people who have history and you have deadlines. I know that's one of the reasons why our experience survey didn't get out on time for the III. So yeah, I'm very concerned about that. I think the other goals are great, but there's definitely some holes. Thank you.
So I think, there's two things here. First, obviously, the board has an obligation to supervise the superintendent. That is its main job. And we set district goals in order to hold the superintendent accountable. And setting goals is one half of it, and making sure they are actually achieved is the other half. And that is really important to make sure the superintendent is actually going to follow through. I think the fact that we are addressing, especially the situation at Columbia High School and looking at the achievement data and having real goals on the superintendent to show progress is extremely important. There are a number of very important programs that were discussed at the last meeting on August 25th regarding achievement data. And those programs were stymied in part by the pandemic, but I think having data showing how they're working this year and are these programs sufficient is very important. I also think that making sure our integration plan is moving forward, which is another large set of goals, is crucial, as we've talked about, including developing a transportation plan that is going to be responsive to community needs.
Ms. Pancholi.
As my colleagues up here have said, the board's goals are important. The board's goals allow for us to hold the superintendent responsible. We need to ensure that the board's goals are data-centric, that they're concrete, that we can actually measure our progress towards those goals. I support the current board's goals to achieving increased transportation for the students in our district. I support the current board's goal towards working towards better communication amongst themselves and better relationships. And I support an ongoing ability to develop even more concrete goals in the future. And I think there's ways you can do that, and that's through the committee process, and I look forward to being part of that process.
Ms. Eckert.
So how do I feel about this year's district goals? I think they're fine. I don't think that they don't seem to be clearly defined. As Ritu mentioned, they're not really that measurable. You know, my running mate Nubia talked about staff recruiting and retention. That was a previous year's district goal. And the fact that we started off this school year with almost 40 vacancies, and it's not including, and we have a national teacher shortage. I'm not really sure why that's not included in this year's goals. You know, I also would ask, why aren't we focusing on the early years? We're always talking about the achievement gap in high school, and we need to be starting in earlier years. At the end of the day, we need to hold the superintendent accountable, and it needs to start now. Thank you.
Okay, next question. How do you believe the district, specifically Columbia High School, should handle suspensions and other disciplinary decisions? Or is that actions? Wow. Starting with you, Ms. Wilson.
I think that the fact that we had the moratorium, I understand why we did it. There's research to back that up. But what I think is unfortunate is that we still don't have a restorative justice program. So students are still in need of support. We need to do better with analysis. We need to do better connecting with these students to understand what they need. And sometimes we make decisions that are big picture for many of the right reasons. But if we don't have a program to back it up, the problems are going to persist. And that's my biggest concern about the moratorium on suspensions, is that there doesn't seem to be a strong support to back it up with a program. That program is being created right now. And that's all I'll say on that. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. I strongly support the work that the district and the board did recently to put in effect a moratorium on suspensions, especially given the brutal data regarding exactly how disparate the impact was of suspensions based upon race. And it's just an indication that there is a systemic issue at play. And the district has committed beyond that 1 year to continue it moving forward. Now, I do think there should be some more clarity on exactly when the superintendent can consider bringing those suspensions, notwithstanding the quote moratorium. I think that needs to be more clearly delineated. I also think there needs to be an improvement in culture as far as looking at restorative justice and actually having real buy-in. I also think that there's a real issue that's not talked about as much with suspensions in special education and the number of times that students may have disability issues that are causing a manifestation, right? They're causing these issues, and that needs to be looked at to have accommodations instead of punitive action.
Thank you. Ms. Pancholi.
So like Will said, we know that the suspension moratorium was put in place during the pandemic because of the disparate impact it had on Black students in our district. I support the fact that we looked into that data and we established a policy that would reduce the further harm on our students. Like Nubia said, though, I also agree that we need to look at our restorative justice practices and we need to look at the data behind it. How many times is the process being used? What is the superintendent doing to drive further communication with all parents, including the alleged victims? And we also need to ensure that our schools are safe, that our students feel safe going into our schools, and that we are supporting all of our students. So, I think there's a lot of things we can do. We need to establish concrete goals to hold the superintendent and the principals of our schools responsible for those goals.
Ms. Eckert.
I think the biggest issue with the suspension moratorium is honestly something that I've learned from teachers and students is the fact that it kind of came at the 11th hour. 11 p.m. board meeting, it was just a bit of a surprise. And I think that seems to be on theme with some of the challenges that we have with the board and the district is communication. Again, based on the data that we've seen, I don't think that it is crazy to put a moratorium in place. However, as Ritu and Nubia have said, we just don't have enough data to show that it's working. The supports aren't in place. Earlier I mentioned conflict resolution training. Do the students actually have a place to work through their feelings? I don't think we have any of those answers right now. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
I'm actually going to answer this question a little differently. When I went to Columbia, I found that most of the kids having behavioral problems were the ones that were not engaged. We just had a fight over here at the 7-Eleven, and that was an undercredited, overage student, right? And so, when I think about we need to pull these students in, I think that we need to think about bringing VOTEC in. Right now, we're telling all of our students to put their eggs in one basket and go to college. If we had some programs that spoke to the new green economy, an economy that's going to require 1 million new electricians, installers, and turbine technicians, I think that we need to offer these kind of programs to engage kids. Not all kids are being pulled in by, the pathway to go to college.
Next question. What would you do to help make students with IEPs feel more comfortable in an environment where it feels impossible to navigate for both the child and the parent? Starting with you, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. So this is work that I have done for the better part of 20 years, and it's difficult because it is, on the one hand, so crucial that students who have special needs get the supports they require and get the IEP, which unfortunately is difficult enough in our district sometimes. But having that IEP does create a stigma. And so it's important that we work to normalize, right? We have these classrooms in our district that we call inclusion classrooms because they have one general education, one special education teacher. Every classroom in our district is an inclusion classroom. There are kids with disabilities all around us, and I think we need to really accept the neurodiversity that is around us. There are schools that I work with, private schools, who do a very careful job of sitting kids down and working through talking about their learning plans, accepting their differences and the ways that they are actually, quite strong and perhaps better than a neurotypical kid. And I think it's important to normalize that as well, both for them and for everyone.
Ms. Pancholi.
So I'm going to start with a personal story. My sister actually has special needs and grew up as a neurodivergent student. My mother, as I explained before, was a teacher, and because of her advocacy, my sister was able to receive the services she needed. I feel passionately like Will about this issue, and I know that it can be trying for both the students and the families. I also know, though, as a consultant in workplaces, that our work environments are full of neurodivergent individuals. All students benefit and gain from a community that accepts its students, including its neurodivergent students and its special needs students. I hope that to the parent who wrote that question or the family that wrote that question, that your child knows that they belong in our community.
Ms. Eckert.
So in 2020, when I began my journey in this district, I had a friend text me, and we were doing back to school night virtually, which everybody was doing. And she said, I don't know why we're the only kindergarten class that has 2 teachers. And, again, because we were still new to the district, this was our first foray into Tuscan and the elementary school, we didn't really understand what was going on. And so to me, it was kind of this elephant in the room of, why are there 2 teachers in the class? Why are the teachers not allowed? I don't know. We didn't know if they were allowed to say that it was an inclusion class. And so to me, I think we need to bring better awareness to why these inclusion classes exist, and just be able to, without, of course, giving away, privacy details, make every parent talk to their child about why it's really important to make everyone feel included. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
As a student that had an IEP, I could tell you one of the worst things was being hauled off to a resource room, which they, nobody liked. And so I think that this drive to have these inclusive classes are really great, and we need to continue that. And, just like Regina said, I think that also, involves educating the students about these disabilities and making it, known that this is something that's very common, and it's not something that should be demonized or something like that. So I'm very happy to see that happening.
Ms. Wilson.
I had the pleasure of going to a CPAC coffee cup chat. Will was there too.
Great time.
Yeah, good time. It was really interesting to listen to parents offer their opinions and offer their personal stories. Although I don't have children with an IEP, I do have a daughter who did need intervention support, and hearing some of the challenges of these parents and what they've had to go through to get their children what they needed in the classroom was heart-wrenching. As a gen ed parent, I will say that there are a lot of info gaps for me. And in general, it sounds like the community doesn't really appreciate the inclusive classes. It should be seen as a positive and not a negative. I think the school district needs to do a better job of creating a more inclusive community, creating more opportunities for gen ed students to learn about the uniqueness of all personalities and all characteristics of children. And that can be done internally through programs or in classrooms. What was the last thing I was going to say? Oh, yeah, and there are different,
That's
I
your
have to
time.
stop. Okay, good. Next time.
Next question. Save it for your closing. Do you think social media presents a significant challenge on moving our community forward in a positive manner? Starting with you, Ms. Pancholi.
I mean, I think there's a lot of documented studies that show that Facebook certainly is not good for anyone's mental health, and that includes school districts, right? You don't have to look very far to know that. But I will say that there are elements of social media that help. As a parent of a student with severe food allergies, a few years ago, I was lucky enough to have posted online, to have received help from my community on how to advocate for my child to ensure he was safe when he returned to school. So there are benefits and there are cons, and we just need to work and understand that we should do better together as a community.
Ms. Eckert.
The short answer, yes. I have my views on social media. If I'm going to be completely honest, if it wasn't for this Board of Education race, I might be off of it completely at this point. And it's really just to promote myself and my running mates. Yeah, I mean, Ritu, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think the community needs to heal. I think that is part of the biggest challenge right now, is that some folks who live and breathe social media, I think unfortunately perpetuate the challenges that we as a community face. So yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I'm not a big fan, and I don't think that it helps. But I do think that as a community, we need to start healing first before any of the online bickering can stop. Thank you.
Certainly. Do you think social media presents a significant challenge on moving our community forward in a positive manner?
Well, I think it's definitely a double-edged sword. It's hard to filter out that noise, and there's definitely a lot of it. But it also does give us a venue to unpackage a lot of these issues. So, I think it's about being respectable, respecting each other, just like members of the board should be doing. We should be doing that online as well. So, I think it gives us a great opportunity to engage and talk about these things. But just like here, we need to respect each other.
Ms. Wilson?
As a publicist, I can say that we're in a PR crisis in this district, and social media often drives that. A lot of the negative news that might come out in things like Politico are driven by the fighting and the chatter on social media. My social media is full with me talking about meditating. I'm always trying to give out positive vibes and to help others through the things that I've learned from my own life journey. But I will say that when used correctly, social media is great. I mean, Arun recently tried to further explain the budgets from the Transportation, the Board of Estimates school meeting, and I really appreciated that he was trying to stay connected with the community to further explain a very complex process. So when used correctly, it's great, but unfortunately, there's a lot of vitriol on social media, and you also just need to be mindful that not everything you read is true. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer?
So I love social media, and it's bad. I need to turn it off. But I would have gotten off of Facebook, but then I moved to town and learned that our entire town runs on Facebook. And you're not anybody until you own a Facebook group that is your own. But it is a challenge moving us forward, because look, there are a lot of really good things happening online, and then there are dark corners where a lot of just toxicity happens. I mean, what are they saying about us right now? I don't know. And the thing is, when you're hiding behind a computer screen, it's the same thing as when you're on the highway. It's like road rage. And we have to remember, these are all our neighbors. These are community members. And I think we have an obligation to each other to be fair with each other online and be gracious, and, for our supporters to also be gracious with each other, because that is the way that we can build community, instead of being the place that all this negativity is coming from, that drags us down as a community, as a school system, and as a board.
Okay, we're going to have a final question, and they gave me an option, so I like to end on a positive note. Name 3 strengths of our district right now, starting with Ms. Eckert.
Three strengths of our district. That's a really great question. I'm digging. And I will say, if you know me, I'm not a pessimist. I am an optimist. Listen, I will say this one thing. We have always been pretty honest about what we think are the challenges that our board is faced with. We've also talked about some exciting opportunities. I do think that we should be really proud of the head of security that we've hired. It was a position that never seemed like a priority, and it was vacant for 2 years. I want it to be a critical focus, not only in the buildings, but in all school grounds. And I will say our biggest strength is our students. They're inspiring, they're resilient, they deserve the best education we can provide. They really are our bright spot. Thank you.
Just to clarify, this isn't the final statement?
No, this is the final question.
You know, I hope that in 3 years, that at the end of my term, it's not as hard to find an answer to that question. But I do think that there's many good things about this district. And most of all, I think it's our students and our teachers and the families. You know, the students are very active. The teachers, they're activists. You know, every teacher that I had, not every teacher, but many of the teachers at Columbia, you know, nurtured activism in me. And I think that's reflective of our district's activism in general.
Ms. Wilson.
My husband and I moved here before we even had kids. We moved here because we knew that this was the place where we wanted to raise our children. And I wanted to make sure that we had enough space to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I love this community, is because we all moved here because we love diversity. It's one of our strengths, and in turn, I find that the media will try to turn it into one of our weaknesses because we push ourselves so much more than other districts do, and because of that, sometimes not everything is going to go smoothly. There's going to be tough times, right, when you're doing that. In addition, students, for sure, they are so resilient, and also the parent community. I think during COVID, it was mind-opening to see how much we banded together and worked together to help our kids through virtual learning. It was not easy, but we did it. And I don't think I would be here today, right here, without the parent community reminding me that I am blessed to be here, and I want to give back to them and do my best if I can get on the board. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. We have an embarrassment of riches. We are in a tremendous place. Yes, we have problems. There's been so much talk about problems, but God, look around. The reason I moved to this district, it's lovely, it's very pretty, but the schools are wonderful and the people are wonderful. I've gone around and talked to so many people in our town, and they are so committed to great education and to the values that I have, the values that our community has, are just incredible. We have contested elections for the Board of Education. A lot of towns don't. This is how many people care about doing this. And we're talking here about how we can have the very most equity, how we can get the really best instruction. We're not talking about banning books. We're not talking about, you know, the sex ed curriculum. We're in great shape here. We have teachers that are just phenomenal from pre-K all the way up to the high school. Really committed, brilliant. And yes, our students, God, our students are just, from the little kids all the way up to high school kids I talk to, it's just, wow.
Okay.
We're really lucky.
Ms. Panchali.
So having met a lot of Columbia High School students, I can tell you absolutely 100%, our students are our pride and joy. Our students are curious, they're intellectually stimulated, and they are interesting human beings, including the freshman Columbia High School student who's currently babysitting my kids right now at home. The other thing that separates us is our values. Unlike other communities in New Jersey, we're not willing to go to sleep and put our head under the covers. We're actually willing to shed light on the issues that plague the rest of this country, including New Jersey. And as Justice Brandes once said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I praise our community on being steadfast and shedding light on our values. And finally, our desire to change. This community is committed to change. Every single one of us here wants change. And that's why we live here.
Okay. Time for our closing statements, and we will do that in the reverse order of our openings, beginning with you, Ms. Pancholi.
In closing, I want to remind our community that there have been some historic wins in our community. We have used our values to guide us towards implementing an ambitious and sound integration initiative to address our historically segregated schools. We have successfully implemented a universal preschool program that provides a quality public education for all of our students. And while some people are on the wait list, it's still a big change. The third is that we finally decided to actually address our antiquated school buildings, and we are doing something about it. So now that you've heard from all of us today, I hope that you will vote early, vote by mail, go to Turtleback Zoo and cast your vote early, and vote for Will Meyer and Ritu Pancholi. I hope that you'll vote for us because you know that we have the experience, we are committed to working hard, we are independent thinkers, and we promise to do the right thing for this community.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you. I want to again thank the League of Women Voters, President's Council, and my fellow candidates for appearing tonight. This is a really important election because our district has clear issues that we need to improve on. And it's crucially important that we elect board members who have the experience in education to engage meaningfully with the district and hit the ground running, and also the demeanor to engage in good faith with every other member of the board. Ritu and I bring those qualities in spades. I also want to make it clear that I love our schools. If I didn't make that clear before, there are a lot of things that we are doing right. There's been a lot of talk this campaign season about disappointment, judgment, and it's not all undeserved. But tonight, I am optimistic. After far too many years, we have construction happening in many of our schools, with more to come. We're clawing our way back from decades of deferred maintenance. Our integration initiative did not have a perfect rollout, but we are finally correcting historic wrongs among our neighborhoods and our neighbors. And we're expanding access to free, high-quality preschool for our community, and hopefully soon for every member of our community. We have more to do, but with the right members on the board, partnering with our teachers, district staff, parents, and students, I believe we can indeed do better together. But only if you go vote. So go vote. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you again to the President's Council and League of Women Voters, and thank you to the audience, everyone who's here, and all those who are watching at home. I commend the district on a few things. Look, we started the Intentional Integration Initiative. That was a big deal, and I'm happy that we've got that rolling. Also, we opened up on time. School started on time. And let me tell you, I know many parents were worried about that from last year. And we did it despite all of the long-range facility construction going on. I really appreciated that the district said repeatedly, we are going to open doors on time. And as a parent, being able to see not just my kids, but students going to school was just amazing. The back to school night, you know, Mr. Mason said, this is the most well-attended back to school night. He's like, people were nervous, like, I've never even talked to this many people. It's been so long, you know? And it was amazing because we were all just so excited to be back inside the school, to be able to see the teachers in their classrooms in person and listen to how passionate they are about teaching our kids. So with that said, you know, there's a lot of pros, but we also have a lot of challenges in front of us. And I believe that the Students Come First slate with Regina and Bill can help with a lot of those challenges, whether it's closing academic achievement gaps, working on teacher morale, working with curriculum and learning to improve things for our students, and improving mental health. And if you get a chance to, please go to eckertwilsongifford.com to learn more about us. Sorry, I'm a publicist, I had to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Gifford.
I also want to thank the President's Council and the League of Women Voters. I also want to thank the most important woman in my life, my wife. She's at home right now with my 4-month-old Lucia and my 4-year-old Killian. So thank you, honey, if you're watching. You know, 20 years ago, I ran for the Board of Education because I wanted to hold the district accountable. I wanted to hold them accountable to live up to this idea of South Orange and Maplewood. You know, this diverse community with good schools that afford every child the opportunity to succeed. You know, Martin Luther King said for schools to be successful, they need to be infused with a mission. I can tell you that the Students Come First ticket is infused with a mission to make that dream of South Orange and Maplewood a reality. Thank you.
Last but not least.
Thank you again, President's Council and League of Women's Voters, to those attending, to those watching online, and to my fellow candidates for joining me up here today. So I talked a lot about why I decided to run for the Board of Education. What I haven't talked about really, is that after kindergarten, after the 2021 school year, I almost enrolled my daughter in private school because it just wasn't a fit for me. On July 1st, I was supposed to submit my payment, and on June 30th at 11:59, I emailed the school and told them I was pulling her spot because I just couldn't bring myself to do it. My husband and I are products of public school. We firmly believe in it, and I will say, and I have very few regrets in life, I don't regret pulling her spot in private school. I am so happy that we've made it back and that we are here and thriving. What I will say is now that you've met all of the candidates, I want to talk about how the Students Come First ticket has always been honest about the most pressing challenges, but also the most exciting opportunities. I believe that Bill, Nubia, and I can bring about the positive change that our community deserves. So on November 8th or early, vote for change, vote for balance, vote for transparency. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you to the candidates for your time this evening and for stepping up to run for this very important role in your community. Good luck to all of you and those who have to make this very important choice. Thank you to tonight's sponsors, the President's Council and the League of Women Voters of South Orange Maplewood. I'd also like to thank our timekeeper and all of you who attended and watched the live feed. It's been my pleasure to moderate this evening, and I enjoyed working with all of you. Thank you for having me. I will now hand this over to Michelle Bobrow from South Orange League to share some very important voter information.
Thank you, and let's thank our candidates. The League of wrong speech, hold on. You have now heard from the candidates, so you can choose any three of them whose positions most completely align with yours. Also on the ballot are a congressional seat. We are now moved to District 11 from 10. State Senator Legislative District 28 due to the resignation of Senator Rice. County Executive, and for those of you in Maplewood, the Maplewood Township Committee has one slot open. For anyone who needs to register to vote, just turning 18 with a new name, new address, whatever, forms including vote by mail requests are on the back table or can be downloaded at essexclerk.gov. If you register to vote by mail, you should have received your ballot by now. Fill it out and either mail it or use any ballot drop box in Essex County. The closest to us are on Springfield Avenue in front of the Hilton Library and in South Orange at the gazebo by the train station. If you wish to vote in person, you can, the old phrase, vote early and often, you can only vote early, not often. Polls are not irregular, but polls are open from October 28th through November 6th, 10 to 8 all days except 10 to 6 on Sundays. The closest locations, and this is voting on the machine, the closest locations are at the Irvington Municipal Building on Civic Square and in West Orange at the Educational Center at the Zoo Complex. Most information can be found at the nonpartisan vote411.org or elections.nj.gov or lwvnj.org. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and remember, vote and bring a friend to vote. Thank you, and thank you.